everybody. It's great to see you. My name's Robert. I'm one of the pastors here at the Crossing, and it is great to see you here. Thanks for coming out today. I have the privilege of speaking to you today, and I don't know about you, but I am grateful to be part of a church where we're actually encouraged to be honest about the real struggles that we go through in life, because we all do, and honest about the challenges that we face in our journey of faith. Because it's my contention that every single person is on a faith journey of some kind. I love our church sign. I don't know if you've seen it when you drive in and out. People a lot of times don't pay attention. If you look at it, it says, "The Crossing Church, a place where faith and life kind of intersect." And that's what I wanted to talk to you about today. And I want to speak not only to the Christian believers that are here with us today, and I know most of you are, I'm sure that you are, but there also could be some agnostics or skeptics that are with us too. And I want to have an honest conversation with you as well. And I'll just kind of tell you right up front, this might be a little bit different kind of a message than you were expecting to hear in church this morning. But I chose to discuss this particular idea because it's very personal for me. You see, in my life, I've struggled with faith a lot. I had a lot of struggles with faith. As a child, my grandmother introduced me to God. She would take me to church with her during the summers, but my parents did not go to church at all, ever. And it wasn't until I became an adult that I came to grips with my own faith, and I chose to become a Christian. And I think part of it is because I wrestled with this whole idea of what it meant to have faith, and I struggled with doubts for a long time, and it's still a struggle. Honestly, I'll just tell you, there are times I struggle about certain things, and I can tell you, choosing to believe in God, choosing to place your faith in God, that's difficult for some people. Yeah, and I know this because I was one of them. I was one of them. Back when I was searching for answers in life, and when I came to church as an adult, I was amazed. I was flat out amazed that there were people that seemingly could just believe. I wanted to believe, and yet my faith journey was not just a spiritual exercise, it was an intellectual one as well. It had to make sense. It had to make sense to me. I couldn't kind of square everything the way it all worked out, and that caused doubts within me. And part of it could be because of my upbringing, not growing up in a Christian home. Part of it could be probably was because of my education. I have a science degree from East Tennessee State University, and while I was at East Tennessee State, I studied biology and microbiology and anatomy, physiology, pathophysiology, chemistry, psychology. I'm looking for answers in all of this thing, so I was looking, and it could have been because of my worldview that had been shaped by the experiences of my life, but for whatever reason, I couldn't make sense of the story that was presented to me about God as a child and the world that I saw and experienced every single day around me. And I felt really guilty about it. I would go to church and I would feel guilty because of my doubts, but my faith needed to make sense. I was not willing to check my mind or my intellect or logic and reason at the door and just say that I believed. And then I saw something. I actually saw something in the Bible that gave me some hope, and I want to share it with you guys today. It's something that you've probably read, but maybe you just skimmed past it. Maybe you didn't notice it. A lot of people miss this point. Most Christians are very familiar with the words of Jesus when he gave what is called the Great Commission. How many of you guys know what the Great Commission is? Raise your hand. You've heard about it. You read it? Okay. So here's the deal. Jesus was meeting with his disciples, and it's going to be the very last time that he is going to meet with his disciples here on earth. And these are the words that Matthew uses to describe the disciples at that meeting. Keep in mind, these are men and women who have been with Jesus for 3 years, and they've traveled with him. They learned from him. They loved him. They saw him crucified, and they've actually seen him resurrected. And here's how Matthew describes that meeting. He says, "Then the disciples went to the mountain where Jesus had told them to go." This is after the resurrection. "When they saw him, they worshiped him, but some of them still doubted." Isn't that amazing? Isn't that crazy? Had you guys ever noticed that before? Here these guys have traveled around, they've listened to Jesus, they followed him and studied him, seen him crucified, seen him resurrected, and yet the last thing that Matthew says about the disciples is, but some of them still had doubts. Matthew doesn't even try to cover it up. He points it out, which is just amazing, and I think he does that because, honestly, a faith journey for a lot of people can be a struggle. And I think that's why I know that I struggled. And I found myself in what I would probably describe as the borderlands. It's like the area in between faith and doubt. I wasn't willing to not have faith, but I still had my doubts. And so I've known many people who aren't very comfortable coming to church. I've met many people who aren't very comfortable even hanging around with Christian people. And yet at the same time, they will linger like I did in the borderlands between faith and doubt, trying to figure it all out, because they can't just set aside the almost universal human kind of sense that, you know what, there must be something more out there. There has to be something. Maybe it's in the beauty that they, you know, if you've ever been to the beach and you watch the sunrise coming up and it's just an awe-inspiring moment, or maybe it's when you're standing in the grove of these ancient, majestic, you know, redwood trees or whatever, or just this deep sense of longing that there has to be more to life than this. There has to be something besides the mundane routines of life. I mean, you add to that the big issues in life, the things that we go through, like career changes, or the birth of a child, or the death of a loved one, or a home that gets destroyed because of a hurricane or a tornado. I mean, these kinds of events, they always raise these questions that honestly have no easy answers. Many people even wonder if having a religious faith is worth it. I mean, a lot of people say religious faith is a crutch. It's just a crutch. Or is it that, or is it something? Is it a path to something that is authentic? Because in our lives, I think we all long for authenticity. I think we want authentic love. We want authentic relationships. We want authentic accomplishments. We want authentic faith. Not long ago, I met some Christians who, you know, people I'm just talking with, and we're having this real down-to-earth conversation. They didn't even know I was a pastor, which is really, really good, because most of the time when I introduce myself as a pastor, people kind of get funny. So we were just talking like people, and they said that they really have a difficult time having faith. And some of them said that I don't even know if I'm a faith kind of person. That kind of got me thinking. Maybe for some people, maybe you grew up in church and you just absorbed your faith. A lot of people do that, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, and maybe you've lived with faith your whole life. Some people, maybe they come to church because it's a peaceful and nice place, an uplifting place to come on the weekends, and that's fine too. But many young people today, the young people that I talk with today, they say that having religious faith doesn't even make sense. In the modern world of like the Hubble telescope and quantum physics and the internet, faith is something that's kind of obsolete. But to me, the divide, the real divide that separates faith and doubt, belief and unbelief, comes down to this. Is this visible world that we see all around us, is this all that there is? Does faith kind of delude us into seeing a world that doesn't exist? Or does faith actually allow us to see a world that is not possible to see without it? I think it's a fair question to ask. I really, really do, because at times, honestly, I'm kind of a reluctant Christian at times because of my faith and my doubts and the doubts that I have, and I'm kind of in recovery from some of the really bad church experiences I've had. Maybe some of you know what that's like. Maybe you've had bad experiences with churches or with church people, and sometimes it's hard to find answers to questions in life. I mean, the big questions like are we really destined to go into eternity, or do we just blow out like candles when we die? Nobody can tell you for sure. Is our universe just a cosmic accident, or was it actually created for a reason? Will we be held accountable, morally accountable for the choices that we make in life? People want to know the answers to that. Is there a God? And if there is a God, then why is there so much pain and so much suffering in life? How come when I pray, it feels like my prayers aren't answered? Anybody but me ever wonder about this stuff? Anybody brave enough to say you do? You're in luck. We're all in luck. I know a lot of times in church we don't want to admit that, but when you're alone in the middle of the night with just your soul, your very own soul, I know a lot of you guys probably wonder about this too. And we're in luck because I found a guy that can help us. I think he can help us all. Anybody know who Thomas Geraci is? Anybody? Thomas Geraci? That's okay. Take a look at his commercial here. It's pretty good.
Hello, I'm Doubting Thomas Geraci. Are you burdened with an unbearable load of doubt? Do you have so many doubts that you no longer really know what to believe is true? You need my Hebrews chapter 11 doubt consolidation info tapes now. Why doubt every little thing when you can consolidate all of your doubts into one easy, manageable doubt? With only one doubt, you can feel psychological relief once more. Not sure that you believe me? Just listen to these satisfied customers.
For years, we doubted that God loved us. We doubted that He would answer our prayers. We doubted that we could ever be good enough for heaven.
With so many doubts, we could hardly function. But thanks to Doubting Thomas Geraci and his doubt consolidation program, well now, we're not even sure if God even exists at all.
Our lives are so much simpler now.
Act now while the law is still on your side. Call 1-800-NO-DOUBT now. Operators are standing by. I think. Leave a message and someone will return your call. Or maybe they won't.
Doubting Thomas Geraci is a federally licensed doubt relief agent.
Don't you wish it was that easy? Don't you just wish you could like call somebody or do something? I personally, though, don't mind being honest, and I'll admit to you, I still have doubts about certain things. Not everything, of course. I mean, I believe a lot of things, but about some things that I don't understand and I can't explain, I can't just say that I have faith about everything. And I've spent a good part of my life reading and studying and thinking and teaching about God. I've taken seminary level courses, and I'm a full-time discipleship pastor, for goodness sake, but I still have doubts. I really, really do at times. There's a small part of me that when I die, because I know I'm going to, I'm over 50 now, and that's become a reality that at some point I'm going to, you don't really think about that before you're 50, but I realize I'm going to die. And if it turns out all to be true, you know, the angels are singing and death is defeated and the roll is being called up yonder, and I'm there, there's a part of me that'll be relieved. Like, wow, man, it was all true after all. Got to admit, I had my doubts about some things. I really did. So is it okay this morning if we don't pretend that people fall into these categories of those that have faith and those that don't have any faith at all? Those that have faith and those that have doubts, and there's just these two camps. Is it even possible, and here's the question I've been wrestling with, is it even possible to have faith in the presence of your doubts? Because I think they can coexist. Because, look, I have faith too. I mean, I've bet the farm on faith. I do have faith, but there's a mystery sometimes to faith, just like there's a mystery to life. And I don't understand every bit of it. My contribution to our Mixtape series is titled Faith and Doubt. And the most important word in that title is the one in the middle, which is exactly where we live our lives, right in the middle. We live life in between an ancient past that we really know very little about and an eternal future that we can't even imagine. And so the question is, will we choose to live our lives with faith in God? And if we do, does that mean that we will not have any doubts ever again? Does having doubts make us a bad Christian? Does it make God mad if you have doubts? Faith and doubt. Most people, if they're honest, would admit that they're probably a mix of the two. But can I be faithful and still follow the truth wherever it leads me? I want to know. I've always wanted to know, and I think some of you might want to know as well. Over the last several years in various churches that my family and I have visited and been part of and served in, I've known of at least 3 people that I can remember that I knew personally. I knew them really, really well, and they all had massive heart attacks before they were 40. Now keep in mind, this is in the state of Tennessee, where the state bird is gravy and sausage. Okay, so there's that, right? But thinking about these guys and thinking about the risks of heart attack, there were 2 immediate consequences. The first one was my wife wanted to know all the details about my life insurance. And the second thing was everybody started talking about what happens when you die. Like when your heart stops beating on this side of eternity, what happens next? And I guess questions about God and faith and doubt and eternity stop being academic when you're having a heart attack. They become the reality you live in. But that's when it kind of struck me. And that's when I began thinking about this whole idea of how both faith and doubt are just like an integral part of my life. We often think of them as opposites. And in some ways they are, but in some ways they're very much alike. Both are concerned with ultimate issues, aren't they? And both of them can show up at unexpected times. And really, I just want to know the truth, don't you? I mean, I have to have truth. I have to have truth. And because I have to have truth, I have doubts. If I didn't have doubt anything, I would just be another one of those suckers that P.T. Barnum was grateful got born every minute. I would fall for all kinds of stuff. So I have to have truth. I also have to have hope, because if I don't have hope, life is horrible. So I choose to believe because I have to have hope. If I didn't have hope, I would fall into despair, and I hate despair. I hate being in that place. In addition to believing and doubting, there's also choosing, because at some point, you have to decide which road you're going to follow. At some point, you have to place your bet, so to speak, like, yes, I'm going to, or no, I'm not going to. The fact is, sometimes people want to believe but find that they can't, and sometimes people want not to believe because of what the Bible says and the implications of that belief, and the life changes that would have to take place because of it. And sometimes people find themselves stuck in the middle, right in the middle, in between faith and doubt, and understandably so. I understand that. I mean, have you ever just considered how many different types of faith, how many beliefs in God and eternity, all this stuff that there is in our world today? I mean, of course, there are Christians, but there are Hindus and there are Muslims, both Shiite and Sunni. There are Buddhists, there are Rastafarians, atheists, agnostics, deists. There's actually a group of people that believe in a flying spaghetti monster. You can look it up. They call it Pastafarianism. I think that's funny. There's Jainism, the belief that there are over like 300,000 various and sundry gods that are with us today, even among Christians. Just think about among Christians, there are hundreds. There have been hundreds of denominational variations over the years. And keep in mind, every single one of them thinks that they're doing it right. There's a small church in the town that we moved here from in Tennessee, and radio time was really cheap, and this church had a radio program, and every single week, almost every single week, I don't want to lie because we're in church, but almost every single week, this pastor would say that they were the only true church. They were the only ones who was getting it right. Anybody else was on the bus to hell. I mean, people think that they are getting, many groups of people think that they're doing it right, which means a lot of people, when they die, are going to find out that, no, I guess they weren't doing it right, because they can't all be right. Some of them are mutually exclusive. One of the ironies of atheism, I think, is that it's a fact that if atheism is correct, when you die, you'll never know whether you were right or not. I mean, just think about that, right? There are problems, though. There are all kinds of different opinions, and there are problems. And many people, one of the things that I understand is there are a lot of people that are smarter than me, a lot of people that are more gifted than me, a lot of people who understand things better than I do, bigger-hearted than me, and they can't even agree on these issues. On top of that, I've read a number of books. I read a lot, and I've read a number of best-selling books that are actually kind of evangelizing for atheism. Not because I want to become an atheist, but because I want to understand people who are leaning in that direction. And one very popular book, you may have heard of a guy named Richard Dawkins. He's from Oxford, very, very smart guy. He wrote a famous book called The God Delusion. That's what he titled the book. It was on the bestseller list for a long time. And at the beginning of the book, this is what he says. He says, if this book works as I intend, religious readers who open it will be atheists by the time they put it down. That was his goal for the book. And I'll just give you a part of it. You don't have to go read it, because here's the best part. He says this, one quote. He says, the God of the Old Testament is arguably the most unpleasant character in all of fiction. Notice right off the bat, he's a work of fiction. The God of the Old Testament is jealous and proud of it. He's petty, unjust, unforgiving. He's a control freak, a vindictive, bloodthirsty, ethnic cleanser, a misogynistic, homophobic, racist, infanticidal, genocidal, megalomaniac, and then it kind of gets hostile after that, so I'm going to stop right there. Okay, that's, honestly though, it's not just people who are writing books or people who struggle with certain questions, or it's not just people that are promoting a philosophical point of view. At times, at some points, in some situations, people want to believe in the truth. They want to understand the truth, and they still find it a struggle. They find that they can't believe what they want to believe in, which is where I found myself many times, and they can't believe what they can't understand what it means to actually believe. Some want to believe. I've met people who want to believe for an alcoholic father, and they believe that he's going to get better. They believe that he's going to get help, and for years they hope and they pray, but he never changes. Some people want to believe for a cure. Some people want to believe for a sister who maybe struggles with mental health issues, and they pray, but rather than getting better, she commits suicide. I've known people like that. Some people say, the God that I read about, the God that you believe in, Robert, he should be close, but right now I feel like he's a million miles away, and I'm in a very dark place, and I feel like God won't even answer my prayers because I don't even have faith. Not even like the grain of a mustard seed. I'm praying, but I'm getting nervous because I think God doesn't hear my prayers. And at the very center of our faith, as Christians, you strip it all away, the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead, that is an issue, that is an event that's going to take some faith to believe. And honestly, And Jesus even said this. This is going to be a stumbling block for some people. What does it mean to believe if we're going to be believed? What does it mean to question and struggle? Where does commitment fit into this? Because can't we just commit our way to it? Can we grow our faith? To all of these issues, I want to just share with you a couple of my observations over the years that help me make sense about faith and doubt. My first observation is this. Doubt is an inescapable part of the human condition. There is no option for doubt-free living available. Part of what it means to be a finite creature with a limited IQ is that there is no escape from having doubts. You're going to have doubts about things your entire life. And this hits us in many ways, and maybe you don't equate the things like I do, but in every area of your life, there is no escape from doubt. When I got married to my wife, I was sure I wanted to do it. I thought it was a good decision, but there was no doubt-free guarantee that it was going to work out. I mean, I wanted to do it. I thought it was a good decision. I knew I was marrying up. I know that because my wife tells me I was marrying up. She tells me all men marry up, though. So, but there was no guarantee, right? We wanted it to work. We hoped it was going to work. When we came to the crossing just a few months ago, I thought it was the right decision. I believed that it was the right decision. I believed it was a good place to come and serve God and minister. But there's no guarantees. There's no guarantees it's going to work out. I mean, I've only been here 6 months. You guys might be sick of me already. I don't know, right? There are no guarantees. You make choices and you hope, but there's always these doubts and questions. We as human beings live in a constant state of doubt. And there could be a number of reasons why we have doubts, but sometimes it's because of circumstances. The circumstances are bad, and so that makes you doubt that God loves you or that you're headed in the right direction. Sometimes it's because we're living in a certain way, and we don't want to believe certain things that the Bible says, because then we're going to have to change our priorities or whatnot. But mostly, doubt is an inescapable feature of the human condition. It is just part of being a human being. If you wanted a doubt-free existence, you picked the wrong species, because you don't have that option. That's part of why in the book of Jude, it's really a letter, a very, very short letter. In Jude, verse 22, it says this: be merciful to those who doubt. Isn't that interesting? You ever wonder why it says that? I think it says that because that's you. That's me. Be merciful to each other, because we all are going to have doubts. I choose to spend my life the way that I choose to spend it because I think it's the best way that I can live. But I'm finite, and I have a limited intellect here, and I have questions, and I struggle with things too. If you wait until all doubt is removed, you'll never make a decision in your life. You'll never make a commitment. You'll never get married. You'll never take a job. You'll never have a child. You'll never make a friend. You'll never serve God if you wait for all doubts to be removed. Doubt is an inescapable part of the human condition. And so that leads to observation number 2 that I came up with, which is every human being lives by faith. Not long ago, I was talking with someone who said, Robert, I wish I could have faith like you do, but it's just too hard for me to have faith. The idea behind this is, like I said at the beginning, that some people have faith and they're over here, and then there are people who have zero faith, no faith in anything over here. But every human being lives by faith. For example, I came out of my office not long ago, just right across the parking lot here, and I had been working in the office for most of the day, and I came out of the office because I needed to get away from my computer, and I was going like computer blind, and so I came out, and it was gorgeous. It was a gorgeous day. The trees are all green, and the smell of summer is in the air. This wasn't last week. But it wasn't all that long ago. But I remember I had this thought, wow, it is great to be alive. Now, I can't prove that to you. I can't prove to you that statement that it's summer and it's great to be alive. How lucky am I to be breathing right now? But if I try to prove that to you, if I try to prove to you that it's good to be alive, if you wait until a physicist or a biologist or a mathematician can prove that to you, that it's good to be alive on a day like that, then forget it. Because that premise cannot be proven. It's what might be called a conviction, like a basic conviction. It's like all children deserve to be loved, or all human beings are created equal. Those are beliefs that can't be proven scientifically. And yet there they are. I believe in them, right? There they are. I uphold them. I think that they are true. It's not just an emotional state or a preference, like peanut butter ice cream is the best. I mean, it is. But Yeah, I read another book I read was called A History of Doubt in preparation for this as I was wrestling with this. A lady named Jennifer Hecht wrote it, and she offers an assessment scale so you can figure out where you fall on this line. And on one end, she talks about the reality of having faith in God, that it's real to you, and that's where you are. And then the other end, she says this is how you can explain things if there is no God. On the other end of God, there is this, that the universe is nothing but an accidental pile of stuff, jostling around with no rhyme and no reason, and all life on earth is but a tiny, utterless, inconsequential speck of nothingness in the corner of space, existing in the blink of an eye, never to be judged, never to be remembered, never to be noticed. Isn't that depressing? I mean, who would want to live life like? Imagine a conversation between two people, and one person says, the universe is nothing but this hot pile of steamy stuff, and the other person says, no, I think the universe was created by God, a personal God, and he has a plan for it. My point is this, that would not be a conversation between a person who has faith and a person who does not have faith, because both of those beliefs are faith statements. You can't prove either one of those things to be true. They are both based on faith. Now, the thing is, generally, we don't like having to have faith. That's the problem. We want to know for certain. We want certainty, and we don't like living by faith. Every once in a while, somebody will try to figure out how you can live without having to have faith. Many years ago, a couple of centuries ago, actually, there's a guy, a philosopher. You may remember him from high school or college. There's a guy named Descartes, René Descartes, and he asked this question, what is the one thing that I can know for sure? What is the one thing that I can know for certain without any doubts at all? And here's what he came up with. Well, at least I know that I exist, because I'm the one who's doubting. I'm the one who's asking all these questions. And so he kind of summarized it. It became a very famous statement for him. It is in Greek, dubito ergo cogito ergo sum. I doubt, therefore I think, therefore I am. I must be, because I'm the one that's thinking. But now there's a whole school of thought, a whole school of philosophy built on the idea that truth cannot be known at all. There's no way to know any truth. Technically, it's called skepticism, and a lot of people are skeptics. We cannot know truth. We cannot even know if truth exists. We don't even know if we exist. It could all be an illusion. There's a guy named Steve Pinker, Dr. Steve Pinker. He's a neurologist, but he's also a skeptic. And he wrote an article I read. He's written a couple of books too. But he wrote this article, and I read it. It was a fascinating article about human consciousness, the consciousness that we have, that we have minds, not just brains. Like we have physical brains, but we have minds as well. And so Dr. Pinker's position is that there is no such thing as you. You don't really exist. All there are atoms. All there are is the physical matter that is inside of your skull. There is physical stuff. What we might call you is nothing but an illusion. It's brain states. It's various neurons that are firing around. And he says this. He says, there is no actual you at the core of your life. The notion of you is just an illusion. Now, the problem with this position is nobody can ever live this out. You can never make this part of you. Nobody lives this out, not even Steve Pinker. Right? Because Steve Pinker, he writes books and articles saying that there's no such thing as Steve Pinker. But somebody keeps cashing his checks, right? He's got a bank account and all of that. In Scriptures, the writer of Hebrews says, without faith, it's impossible to please God. That bothers a lot of people. That bothered me for a long time. I wondered, why do I have to have faith? If it's true that it's impossible to please God without faith, why is that? But the point that I want to make to you that is without faith, you can't please anyone. You'll never have a decent relationship. You'll never have a friendship without having faith in someone. You'll never raise a child without having faith that that child's going to make the right decisions. Without faith, it's impossible to please God. But without faith, it's impossible to please anybody. It really is. The Apostle Paul, he writes in Galatians, his letter to the Galatian church, he says this. He says, the righteous will live by faith. And I think that's true. But I think unrighteous people live by faith too. It's just a different faith. It's just a belief in a different system or belief in different priorities. There's no such thing as a no-faith person that doesn't exist. We all struggle at times. We all struggle with faith, and we all struggle with our doubts, and that's just part of it. As long as you have faith, you will also have doubts because they coexist. In fact, faith is only required in the presence of doubt. You ever think about that? I mean, you have to have faith when you have doubts, when you don't know for certain. When factual knowledge comes, then faith is no longer required. Because it's already been proven to you. And I say this partly because a lot of people say, I can't become a Christian, Robert, because I still have doubts. I still have questions. But I say, as long as there are doubts, you are the exact kind of person who can have faith. As long as there is uncertainty, that is the only time that faith is required. That is the only time that you can please God, is through that faith. When the doubts are gone, you won't need faith anymore. And that's exactly what Paul says. He wrote a letter to the church at Corinth, and he's talking about these things, and this is what he says. He says, right now we see things imperfectly, as in a cloudy mirror. Like we have these doubts, we have these questions, we don't know for certain. But then, at some point later, we will see everything with perfect clarity. All that I know, Paul says, all that I know right now is partial, and it's incomplete, with questions and with doubts. But later on, I will know everything completely. There will come a day when you will know everything completely, just as God completely knows me. So one day, look, it's going to make sense. But here's my final observation for the day. Observation number 3, doubt can actually lead to a stronger faith. There's actually a purpose, I believe, behind doubt, and that is to help lead us into having a stronger faith. And I know that sounds like a contradiction, but sometimes people who doubt, I was one of them. I felt overwhelmed by guilt because I doubted. Everybody said, no, I just believe. And I had these doubts, and I thought I wasn't a good Christian because I wrestled with these doubts. And sometimes people with doubts, I just tried to repress them. I just tried to push them down. I tried to ignore them and act like I have faith. You ever do that? Like act like you have faith? I was talking with a friend who said, Robert, you know what? I never read any of those books like you were talking about, Richard Dawkins. I don't read those books because I'm afraid that it would undermine my faith. Now, please understand, I'm not saying you should go out and buy that book. Maybe you don't need to read that book. Maybe it's not interesting to you, whatever. But if you don't read that book and you avoid that book because you think it's going to undermine your faith, then what that really says is deep down inside, you don't believe Jesus was telling the truth. Right? Because if your faith is based on what somebody says, then you're putting faith in them, not your faith in Jesus Christ. It's impossible to trust Jesus way down inside if you doubt that he was telling the truth. There is a truth to Jesus. Jesus had a lot to say about truth. He said, you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Jesus said, I am the way and the truth and the life. And he said, when the Spirit comes, he will guide you into all truth. So according to Jesus, you don't have to choose between truth and Jesus. If you look for the truth, you will find Jesus. But there's no other way to do that. There's no other way to find Jesus and trust than to work it out and think and question and come to grips with those questions and struggle until you come to see that he is truth and he was telling the truth. The purpose of doubt is to motivate us to do that, to push us in that direction. If you are a person and you're here and you struggle with doubts, I can tell you you're not alone. You're really not. I remember when I first started reading the Bible and trying to figure things out, I used to try to keep track of the disciples, and for some reason I tried to do it like they do in Snow White, you know, with the dwarfs, like Sleepy and Dumpy and all, you know. So like John, John was Peter is the impulsive one. John was the beloved one. Judas was the traitor, right, the bad guy. But one of the disciples, he actually had a nickname kind of like that. He was famous for doubting, and it became his nickname. Who was that guy? Yeah, Doubting Thomas, right? But look, if you read this, it's not just Thomas. If you really look at it, Abraham doubted. Sarah doubted. Elijah doubted. John the Baptist doubted. They were all doubters, all of them. Jesus' family doubted him so much they thought he was crazy. They were ready to do an intervention. All of the disciples ran away because they doubted, right? They were all doubters. And you know what? God didn't give up on any one of them. That didn't disqualify them. God doesn't take people and tell them, look, you're going to have to manufacture certainty about everything. And you're going to have to be, you know, that kind of person. Maybe what God really wants us to do is be faithful to what we know for sure. Right? So the question is, how are we doing at the things that we know for sure? How are we doing living out the things that we already truly understand and believe? For example, this was a big part of Jesus' teaching. And it's kind of a biblical principle that if you have been forgiven by God, if God has offered you grace and you've been forgiven by God, then you need to offer grace and forgiveness to other people. Anybody skeptical about that? That the Bible teaches that Jesus taught that? Anybody stay up late at night wondering if that's really true? No. Okay, so we all believe that, right? We all believe that's true, that if you've been offered grace and you receive grace, you need to offer grace to other people. We believe that to be true. How are you doing living that out every day in your life? How are you doing? Are you doing pretty good at that? Maybe what matters most to God is not that I have certainty and comfort of understanding everything. Maybe what really matters to God is that I'm willing to do and live out what I already claim I know for sure. Maybe if I do that, then maybe God can use me even with my doubts. Maybe God can help move me closer through this journey of faith. I love the story of the father in the Bible who's so desperate for his son. He wants his son to be healed. And he's so desperate, he comes to Jesus, he finally gets with Jesus, and he says, Jesus, please, I need you to help heal my son. And Jesus said, do you believe? Do you believe in me? And the man says, yes, I do believe. Help my unbelief. Yeah, I do, but I still struggle. Jesus, I believe and I doubt, I hope and I fear, I worry and I waver. Help me in my unbelief because I still have some. As we get ready to close today, if you're still struggling with doubts, I want to give you some encouragement. The Christian faith is somewhat bipolar in the way that it's lived out. I mean, disciples live their life in the middle, in between faith and doubt, and worship and doubt, and trusting and questioning, and hoping and worrying. At the Great Commission, Jesus looks at these guys, these worshiping, doubting guys who are there, and he says, you guys get to all go. All of you guys, go and change the world in my name. Go, and as you go, you'll get better at this stuff. It'll make more sense. But you doubters are included too. You notice he didn't say those guys can't come. Doubters were included as well. Disciples are not people who never doubt. They doubt and they worship. They doubt and they serve. They doubt and they help each other with their doubts. That's what we do here at the Crossing. We serve and help and care for each other, and we do it even when we have doubts. If this is a message that has kind of resonated with you, if you or somebody you know is struggling with these kinds of issues and you want to talk about it, because, it's easy for me to get up here and talk about it, but maybe you want to talk about it. Maybe you want to have a conversation about it. Maybe you have some questions and some doubts. I'm offering a thing that we're going to be doing here called Coffee and Conversation. It's just this stuff. For every Tuesday night in the month of July, we'll be meeting here at the church, and we'll have some coffee. We'll ask some questions, and we'll talk about it. And you guys are all welcome to come. If you go out to the welcome area in the front, the circle there, you'll see some slips of paper, have all the details. You can take them. You can give them to somebody you think might need them. I think that would be great. But we wanted you to have an opportunity to continue this conversation. I'm going to pray now, and then we're going to close the message. Father God, thank you so much for your love and grace. God, thank you for the opportunity I've had to share my heart with these folks. I ask, God, that you bless each one. Bless those that are searching. Bless those that still have questions and doubts, Lord. Be merciful to those who doubt. In Christ's name I pray. Amen.